Well, good afternoon, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As you can see, I'm out here by the park, and I used to come over here every morning and walk Flapjack back when he was still with us, but now that he's gone, I don't get over here as often anymore. As you can see, it's park's greening up nice in the spring, and now that the sun's out, the weather's warming up. So why am I over here today to talk to you? Well, let me just show you. I got the van out. We're gonna take that out for a drive. I haven't had the van out in quite a while, and there's a reason why I haven't been out camping with it. Got a little bit of wind noise right now. I apologize for that. Today I haven't driven it for a while, and I need to get it out and exercise a little bit, and so it seemed like a good day to do that. So let's just see. I'm gonna take you for a drive, make a little video today, and I'm gonna have to set the camera down for just a second because it takes the two hands to do the seat belt in this thing. There we go. So this video is going to be kind of a combination of a history and a windshield tour, and I'm going to probably put it in my Chasin Payson playlist. And but I'm going to take you out west of town a little bit today, and in order to give you a little bit of background on that, let me just tell you that you know, the little town I live in, Payson, Arizona, a town of about 17,000 people, and located almost in the middle of the state. But there's a main road coming in from the south. It comes from the Metro Phoenix area. And there's a main road going north that goes north up through Pine and Strawberry and goes all the way up to Flagstaff and Winslow and cuts across over to Camp Verde and Cottonwood. And then there's a main road that goes out east, and that goes over toward Cholo and points east from there over to New Mexico. What we don't have is we don't have a main road going out to the west. And there's a reason for that. There's a road, and I'm going to take you out on that road today, and this is going to be probably end up being kind of a long video. So this might be a good spot right now to, you know, put the video on pause and go use the restroom and go get yourself a cup of coffee or some iced tea or whatever it is, because this is going to take a little bit, and so part of it's going to be listening to Chuck ramble as well. So right now I'm waiting for another car to leave so I can get going here, and as soon as they get out of my way, we'll get on the road here. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the history stuff and some of the terrain stuff and some of the landmarks. And this road we're pulling out on goes by 3 different names. Back behind us here, where we come in from, basically where this white car is going. From there it's originally Main Street, and then when it gets down to this section, it's called Country Club, because it goes past the golf course. And then down here a little bit, it becomes Doll Baby Road, and that's we're going to head out Doll Baby Road, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So we get just past the park here. There's this one little section of housing, and then we got the golf course, and boy, the golf course is it's greening up really, really nice. This is the front 9. It's really, really kind of pretty. I've never been a big golf enthusiast. I've tried it, and I never could really get myself interested in it. You look over here, you see that house on top of that little hill right there? Well, that used to belong to a doctor, and he actually had a helicopter. And there's a helipad up there where he used to park his helicopter at his house. And it was one of those old bubble ones, like the kind you see in MASH. And he'd take off and he'd fly around the neighborhood, usually way too low. And the neighbors didn't like it much because they were always afraid he was going to crash it through the roof of one of their houses or something. But up here, so this is the clubhouse for the golf course. They got a nice restaurant in there. I've taken you on part of this before, but right here, this is the back nine of the golf course, and this is where Doll Baby Road starts. And the Doll Baby Ranch is out at the end of this, and it's got kind of an interesting history. I'm going to tell you more about that when we get out there. But right now, the pavement's going to end up here pretty quick, and there's some interesting history in this whole area. One of the things I want to show you is right up here. The very first person that's credited to being the very first settler here in town was a guy named Bill Birch. And he built a house in 1876. He built a house right in this area right here someplace. And that was the first actual residence that was built here in this little valley. Well, and right here, just to the left of us, right here, you can see that was actually a mine that's collapsed. It was a mine tunnel there. It was called the Golden Waif Mine, and further up on the ridge up there's another entrance to it. And I'm going to pull over here for a second and tell you a little story about that. Years back, I used to do a lot of exploring old abandoned mines and stuff, and the tunnel up on the ridge up there is still part of the Golden Waif Mine, but it was actually open years ago. I don't know if it's open now or not, but there's a road along the top of that ridge, and I went down to explore that old mine one day, and I was all by myself, and I went down there, and it was a day pretty much like today, bright and sunny. And anyway, I went in that mine tunnel, and of course my eyes took me a little bit for my eyes to get accustomed to the darkness in there. Well, I got in there a little bit, and all of a sudden a rattlesnake started rattling, and it was behind me. It was between me and the entrance, and I didn't know where it was. I couldn't see anything, and so I didn't get excited. And unfortunately, a lot of times when there's more than one rattlesnake, there's more than one, and I had no idea what was going on, so I just froze where I was at, and I tried to talk in a very calm voice, and I said, "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you, and I'm not going to bother you." And well, I stood there for a few minutes, and finally my eyes started getting accustomed to the darkness, and I finally saw where he was, and looked around me, and there wasn't any other ones, fortunately, and I was able to, he was over on one edge of the tunnel there, and I was able to kind of scooch my way around the other side of him and get to the entrance. And he was rattling at me the whole time, but it kind of scared me, of course, and I wasn't interested in getting snake bit. But like I say, I don't know if that tunnel is even still open or not. The Forest Service came in here and closed a bunch of them. But let's move on out Doll Baby Road here a little bit. The next thing we're going to come to is a necessary thing. All communities have to have one, and this is the lowest point in the community elevation wise, and this is the local sewer plant. And you see the bridge right there, and that goes across what's called American Gulch, and that goes right through the middle of town. But our sewer plant's a pretty modern thing. When it was built years ago, it used a process called the Bardenpoe process, and what that is it uses ultraviolet light to absolutely sterilize all the product that comes out, the end result from the sewer plant. And as a result, there can be nothing living in it. They pump that back up to the lake where we just came from, and then from there they store it, and they also pipe it out to the golf courses and stuff. They also supply part of their electrical needs with this big solar field over here. This road right here crosses American Gulch twice. Now, if you look over here, you can see there used to be a house over there. And I'm going to tell you how this all ties together here in a minute, because there's kind of some history behind all this. And there was a development going to go in way out here. And they fixed the road, and you'll see what I mean here in a couple minutes. But one of the things that they didn't do is they were going to have to put in a great big box culvert across this crossing here, and another big box culvert across the next crossing that we're going to come up to. And of course they didn't want to do that because those things are probably about $1 million a piece. And so they were going to move the road over to the other side so the road didn't cross the creek, and tie it back in together back up here where we're coming up on. Well, that ended up, they never got that far, and I'll tell you that story as we get out here a little bit further. This cattle guard we're coming up to is actually our city limits. Looks like some guys up here doing some target shooting or something or other. You can see the trees are starting to leaf out nice. A little high clouds today, so the sun's not quite as brutal as it usually is. But we're coming up here on the second crossing, and they were going to try to replace that road, put that road over on the other side of the creek over there, so they wouldn't have to address both of these, put big box culverts on both of these crossings here. Well, you notice as soon as we get through here now, all of a sudden we're going to be back on pavement again. That's pretty amazing. So you might wonder how that all came to be. And the answer to that is that the way out here, there's the pavement. This, by the way, back in the old days, they used to evaporate. These were the evaporation ponds for the sewer plant. It used to stink like heck out here. And they went to a different process now. They don't use that anymore. Well, American Gulch, which is right next to us here, that actually runs down and runs into the East Verde River. And it actually makes a kind of a sharp right turn up here ahead, up here a little bit, and runs between those two hills over there. I'll show you when we get up the hill a little bit here. But we're headed up a mountain called Snowstorm Mountain. And anyway, Dow Baby Ranch actually consists of two different parcels of private land about a mile apart. And the original one was the original ranch, and then the other one is called Dickinson Flat, and that was originally part of the ranch, and it got bought separate from the other segment of the ranch, and somebody was gonna put in an equestrian development there. And of course, in order to do that, they had to do something about this road. So they actually ran power and telephone, if you can imagine that. That was still back when everybody used landlines. So they ran power and telephone all the way out here. And they paved this road. Well, they didn't pave that first section because they had to build those box culverts and address that water somehow. But they built the rest of this. They paved the road all the way out. And I have no idea how much that must have cost them. But they paved the road all the way out to their property. And we're going to run the camera today while we're going over there. We come over the top of what's called Snowstorm Mountain. And we're going to be going down over there. You see a nice day for the drive. And I haven't been out here in quite a while. And we've had just enough rain to green things up nice. That's the Madazel Wilderness right in front of us there. The Madazel Mountains and North Peak. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get a little closer. And I'm just going to let this run. We'll call this part a windshield tour. They spent a whole bunch of money. What that was going to be, it was going to be a high-end equestrian development. Equestrian obviously means rich people that, high-end equestrian means rich people that have horses. And the idea being is people would have weekend homes out there, and they'd leave their horses out there all the time, and there would be employees out there, wranglers, that would take care of the horses. And then when these folks would come up for the weekend, the wranglers would get their horses out for them and do all that kind of stuff. And so they didn't have to worry about hauling their horses back and forth or stabling their horses during the week. The horses would live out here, and they'd all have second homes out here. and they just come up on weekends or whenever they could. That was the original plan. And I actually did a little bit of consulting work for them, because how they were going to address their fire protection needs. And anyway, what happened was when the economy crashed in 2008, that the hopes and dreams of that development crashed with it. It looks like we got somebody camping / living out here in an old fifth wheel. A lot of that going on too. So basically the development went bankrupt. They'd already spent I don't know how many millions of dollars running the power lines, and the power lines never did get hooked up. But you can see right here, there's one of the boxes for the power lines and the conduit for the cable and all that kind of stuff. And we're gonna stop right here and kind of show you across the valley there. And we're going to be going out that roadway out there that you can see. But the reason why the highway never came in here from the west was because of that big mountain range right over there. And that's the Madazelle Mountains. And it's also a wilderness area, so you can't build roads through it. Right in front of us here, over there, if you look real carefully, you can see a house right in the middle of the screen. That's actually a mining claim, and the guy lives out there, and they still do a little bit of gold mining, at least they used to. And I don't know how successful they are, but people that used to live there, they actually made a little money off of that. They sold it and moved away, and like everybody else, they got old. And I don't know who actually even lives there anymore. That red roof, you can't see the angle of the sun, but the roof is a red metal roof, and boy, it shows up for miles. Looks like a Pizza Hut. So we're coming down off the back of Snowstorm Mountain right now. That road there is how you get to that old mine, and that goes clear down to a network of roads down through a place called Cypress Thicket. And Cypress Thicket was basically kind of over there, and most of it was a very large grove of Arizona cypress trees, and that's where it got its name. And it burned. A fire went through there in 2004 called the Willow Fire, and it pretty well destroyed that area there. And of course, that's been 20 years ago now, and it's starting to grow back. But I haven't been out here in a long time. You can see the black marks where the kids with the high horsepower cars been out here playing. As you can see, this is a pretty vast area out here. Squirrel run across the road in front of us. The peak over there, that high peak, is called North Peak. It's the furthest most peak in the Madazelle Wilderness. And the one over there to the left is Madazelle Peak, and it's actually the tallest peak. And they're both a little bit over 7,000 feet. Cows out here. This is all open range. You gotta be careful driving out here at night, because the black cows don't show up very well. One of the things, when they pave a road, it makes everybody drive about 3 times faster than they should. This thing used to be all washboardy and rough and bumpy. Willow Fire burned in 2004. It burned 240,000 acres. It basically burned off that whole mountain range. But it was a lot of it was low intensity burn, which actually probably made the forest a little healthier, and didn't totally destroy the whole thing. Or as we say in the fire business, we said nuked it. But it kind of burned in mosaic pattern. This road doesn't get a whole lot of traffic. And kind of interesting that they, basically they paved it and then they ran out of money. They ran out of financing when the economy crashed. There was only going to be, I believe, it was 136 homes there, and that was all there was going to be there, and they were going to be high-end places. Like I said before, rich people that own horses. Now it's a little back road hidden gem that probably 99.9% of the people that drive through Payson never know this is even here. As you can tell, it's pretty smooth, a pretty nice drive. Most of the vegetation here this is what's called Pinon juniper dominant fuel type, and there's also quite a few Arizona cypress here too. The Pinon pines and the Utah junipers. Utah junipers aren't even native; they were actually brought here obviously from Utah. An old army truck with a tank on it for hauling water for the stock. That road there where the truck is at goes back down to the river back there, but it's not someplace we could go with the van. It's definitely a four-wheel drive road once you get back in there a little ways. Or in the case of that army truck, I guess six-wheel drive. So we're constantly dropping in elevation. You can imagine how much money they put in, even in year $2,000. You can imagine how much money they put into this road to clean it up and put in all the drainage and run the power and the conduit all the way through here and put pavement down. It actually has, for 20 years with almost no maintenance, it's actually held up pretty well. Get a little closer to the wilderness boundary here, you can see how rugged those mountains actually are. Is all national forest land out here, with the exception of these little private inholdings that we're talking about, or we will be talking about. coming into Dickinson Flat here. This is that first section of private property, and this is when they first started going to put that equestrian development in there. On the right here was going to be where all the horse and corrals and everything were going to be at. They built this big pavilion, and then over on this side they built this thing. Well, that was going to be a rustic water tank, and originally they were going to put in like a little commercial development there with a convenience market and an ice cream shop and some other stuff over there, but the farthest they got was just putting that in. So you notice now you can see fire hydrants here. Well, they put the water mains in the ground, they put the fire hydrants in, but they never built the well and tank setup to accommodate it. Now you can see there's some people storing some trailers in here now. Well, what's going on now, and what we've been told, is that they're actually going to put an RV resort out here, and that this is some of the preliminary work for the RV resort. I'm not sure, but this looks like a garden here that somebody put in. Maybe they're going to have a community garden as a part of that. But when they were going to put in that equestrian development, that's when they put in all these stone gabions and started this fence, and they put in a couple of streets, cul-de-sacs down there, and you can see the other fire hydrant. And there actually used to be right up on that little ridge up there, there used to be an airstrip. And now we're at the lower elevations now. We got some mesquite trees and stuff here, and up here's another one of those little side streets, and of course they paved it all, and the fire hydrant's over there, and the water system's not hooked to anything. Put the one there, and then they stubbed it out here for another one. Well, this is where our pavement ends, and the road's going to get bumpy now. So I'm going to try to go pretty slow and try not to shake my van apart or shake your teeth out. This is the way the whole road used to be out here before they put that pavement in. So they announced the development of this into an RV park with great fanfare, but as you can see, there's nothing happened yet. More dry fire hydrants. And now we get to drive real slow. This road here is usually pretty good. It can get a little muddy. After a bunch of rain or snow. As you can see, we haven't had enough. A little rain shower in town yesterday, but I don't think it was enough to affect this road. You see, even here they put in the water system. Never put in the well or the tank to supply it. Here you can tell this is obviously a mud hole when the weather's bad. We're just going to kind of slowly navigate our way through it here. Big bump, go slow. Take it easy, Chuck. My van will go through all this kind of stuff, but you certainly don't want to go very fast. You can tell how ungodly bumpy this thing is. We're leaving the private property now. We're going back onto national forest land. And believe it or not, the road actually gets a little better. look over here across the valley. You can see that up there's a house on the hill up there, and he's kind of the watchman over the property. And there's a couple more places down in the bottom down there. We're gonna go up here and make a big U-turn. Down the other side. You can get a good look at North Peak, and that canyon, this creek that runs right up from down there and runs right up the thing you're looking at there is called City Creek. It got its name from a original development I'm going to tell you about here in a minute. It was called Madiselle City. Right now that's one of the main hiking and horseback trails through the wilderness area, and their trailhead's right up here a little bit. I'll show it to you when we get here. There used to be a road right there called Poe Hollow Canyon Road, and they closed it and put those rock cairns and stuff up there to make sure it stayed blocked. Because what would happen is a lot of times the guys with the quads, they close it off for jeeps and stuff, but the quads would sneak around the barricades and still run on it. The Forest Service didn't like that much, so they made a point to make sure it was closed off. There's the parking area where you park your vehicles. You got it for the going on the backcountry hike there, and of course there's the City Creek trailhead and information bulletin board about it. A little corral for horses. It's popular for the horse people, and the entrance to the trail itself is about 50 foot behind us. I missed it when I was coming through there. You saw where that sign was pushed over. That's where it was at. We're coming down into the other section of the private land now, and that was the Dalbaby Ranch itself. And heard some about some stuff that changed down here. And one of the reasons I wanted to come out here today is to check to see if it was true. You can see now we're crossing. This is City Creek, and you can see it's dry right now. It's another one of those seasonal creeks that after a rainstorm or snow melt or something it runs, but windmill still working. Now we're back on the private land again. Still got some old corrals from the ranch here. Now this up here was where the old original entrance to the ranch was. I think I'm going to pull in here for a second and get out and talk about this a little bit here and stretch my legs a little. You see the old stone barn is still there. I'd heard that they tore the houses down, and by golly, there you can see the slabs over there. They did tear the houses down. And See, Doll Baby Ranch, the Western Rivers Conservancy and the U.S. Forest Service forever conserve the historic Doll Baby Ranch, and for the benefit of fish and wildlife and to ensure permanent public access to the Madazel Wilderness. And it goes on. I'd heard that an environmental group ended up buying this section of the ranch. And basically, you can see they left the old barn still here, but they tore the houses down. This was the original main entrance to the ranch. They used to cultivate all this across here. They used to grow alfalfa here because the river's right down there where those trees are. And so they had all the water they needed. And so you might wonder where the name Doll Baby Ranch came from. Let me turn you around and talk to you. Well, the Doll Baby Ranch originally was a guy named Mark McDonald that was the rancher here. And there was somebody came in here before him. And before it was actually a ranch, it actually was a little Mormon community. It was built in the late 1870s, and it was called Madazel City, and that's where the name City Creek came from. Well, Madazel City, that was founded about the same time they founded the settlement up in Pine by the early Mormons. Well, up in Pine, the Apaches pretty much left them alone. But this area here was very important to the Apaches because of the river and because of the corridor through the mountains along the river. And see, the Apaches didn't like the Mormons being here. And so as a result, they harassed them constantly. And the settlement here only lasted for about 18 months, and they finally packed up and they moved on up into the settlement up by Pine. And they abandoned, Madazel City became abandoned. Well, later on it became the ranch, and the name Doll Baby, the Mrs. McDonald had a baby that died shortly after birth. And the story goes that they built a little wooden box for the baby, and as they were going to bury the baby, and the other ranchers came to pay their respects, and one of the kids walked up and looked in that little coffin with that little baby in there, the body of that little baby, and the little kid said, well, she looked just like a perfect little doll baby. And so they named the ranch Doll Baby Ranch. That's why it's not Baby Doll, it's Doll Baby. And so that's the story about how it came to be. And it was owned by a variety of owners over the years. And up until this environmental group bought it, it was actually still run as a cattle ranch. So anyway, that's the story. Now the grave of the little baby was out here somewhere, and as the story goes, it wasn't very well marked, and at some point in time, when they were cultivating this for crops, they inadvertently ran over the grave, and then they couldn't find it again. So the baby's grave is out here someplace, but nobody knows exactly where it's at. So as you can see, it's a pretty open, tough country, wild country, and just what you think about cattle, people, and horses, and give you a pan around. There our chariot awaits, is sitting there idling. So let's get back in the van, and I'm going to take you to the end of this road. For this last little bit, I don't think we need to put a seatbelt on. We got to go about another, maybe a mile. There's the original ranch gate. Used to be a sign up there. Maybe if I find it, I'll plug in a picture of it here somewhere so that you can see it. As you can see, the river's over there, and the trees are greening out. All on a video trip like this in quite a while, so aren't those trees pretty? Actually be 3 ranches across here, and there's the Doll Baby and the Oh golly. I'm trying to remember the name. The NB was the other one, and the LF. The NB ranch and the LF ranch. And the LF ranch is actually a private inholding back in the wilderness area. And when we get up here at the gate, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I used to run a 4x4 tour company, and one of my routes that was the most favorite for people was about a 4.5-hour loop. And as you can see, where this sign says Cracker Jack Mine 6 miles, well, we'd come in the other direction to Cracker Jack Mine, and we'd come across this way, and we'd come out back to town the way we just came. And sometimes I'd run that route 2 or 3 times a week. And this is the turnoff where it comes in at, and the river's right over there. And of course, you got to cross through the river. I'm not going to try to do that with a 2-wheel drive van, even though this thing's pretty heavy and it'll go just about any place I go with it. I don't want to tempt fate, because if we got stuck out here, it might be a while before somebody came to rescue us. There's no cell signal and no nothing out here. Here to the end. Doll Baby Trailhead. You see that gate right up in front of us? That's the wilderness area boundary. Rockwell, look at that big old tree that fell across there. I'm gonna stop right here. Get back out. You can see they got a crossover for hikers or horses. And of course there's the information board for the wilderness area. Let me get you a good shot. You can pause here and zoom in if you want to read all that stuff. But as you can see here, this is the wilderness boundary of the Matazel Wilderness, Tonto National Forest. Well, that road keeps going, so what's that mean? Well, as I told you, there's a ranch back in there. There's combination padlock. The only person that's allowed to drive back in there is the rancher. And obviously you can see fresh tracks in there, so they've been in and out of there. It's about 5 miles back in there. And let me back up a little bit and maybe come over here a little bit. Talk to you here for just a smidge, because usually there's cars parked here because there's trailheads and hiking trails back in there, but there's something I want to show you. But in order to really show it to you, I got to kind of, maybe over here would be better. Yeah, I could, over here is I guess better. Yeah. If you look right over top of that sign, and at the top of that hill over there, see the road going up there at an angle? Well, that's the road that goes into the LF Ranch, and from here back to that ranch is about 5 miles, and that ranch is right on the Arizona Trail, which is a hiking trail that goes all the way from the Mexican border to the Utah state line. and goes right through the Madiselle Wilderness. The other thing I want to tell you about is, see that set of cliffs up there? Right there on the skyline, right above that sign. Well, there's a big ruin up on top of there, and it's a stockade ruin. And there's all kinds of stories about who originally built it. But what I think happened is that when the Mormon settlers first started founding Madiselle City, there was a regular Indian ruin up on top of there with a lot of little rooms. And the Apaches were pretty tough customers to deal with, and I think the settlers probably went up there and they reconfigured all those rocks into 2 large rooms. And it's about a 1.5 mile walk back there, and you got to walk up to the top of that hill. And we're not going to do that today, but maybe some future time I'll come out and show you that. But the ruins, there's 2 big rooms up there, and the walls are taller than I am in one of them. And I think what they did is they built one for the stock, and then the other one's for the people. And but it's a pretty significant ruin, and it's right on the edge. The edge of the cliff right there is one wall of it. You can't really see it from this angle. But anyway, that's brought you all the way to. Took the van out to give us some exercise today. Brought you all the way down Doll Baby Road, all the way to the wilderness boundary, and showed you a little bit of that. And so I think I'm going to end this one right here. So as I always tell you, take care of each other and love each other and show gratitude for what you have. And I hope you enjoyed this little trip today, and I've enjoyed bringing it to you. So I'm going to give you another look at that wilderness area sign. And until I talk to you again, I'll just tell you, peace out.